A warm welcome to leaders joining in from all over the world. This is the third and final round of our virtual Lean-In Circles for 2020, brought to you by Old Mutual, Greenfolk and Leading Edge Management Consultants. This platform allows women from all ages, races and backgrounds to come together to learn from one another's leadership experiences. The objective is to create a diverse table where we can share growth lessons, but also prepare the next generation to take over leadership. Today, we conclude with our 2020 theme called Showing Up, with Taimi Itembu, who will be diving deeper into how to show up for your community. Taimi Itembu is an entrepreneur and high-performing corporate affairs and organizational gender strategist who currently works for ExxonMobil. Here is Kasi Itana, our Lean-In facilitator, to guide the conversation further.
Should I start? Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our third Lean-In Circle. And as Marisa has said, we are concluding the 2020 series. I am joined by Taimi Itembu, who doesn't need further introduction because Marisa have done a very great job. I'm super excited to be here and a warm welcome to all of you. So I'm turning to Taimi. Welcome, Taimi.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so great to be here.
As you know, our focus for this Lean-In session is on showing up in and of for your community. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about community, we are not only talking about the place or the geography where you live, we are talking about many other ways, and particularly taking a focus on how communities shape our identities. So Taimi, you have a unique story. Raised in Katutura, where you currently live, you attended Windhoek International School and obtained an IB diploma. Then you went further to complete a bachelor's degree in Canada, came back to Namibia, worked as a civil servant for the Namibian government, and then you left the country again, went to Harvard University where you completed a master's degree. I'm sure all these milestones in your life have made you to think deeply, to challenge your assumptions and various aspects of your identity. So the first question is, how do you define yourself as an African, as a Namibian, as a woman, and as a change maker?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kaseda. I think that's an amazing question because for the longest time in my life, I've obviously been placed in situations that have, questioned my consciousness about myself. But if, when you ask that question, I actually start thinking about Janelle Monáe's song, I Like That. Mm-hmm. And I really like I like the song, it's my anthem, but I mean, if I were to choose 4 words that define me, I'd probably choose that I am brave, I'm bold, I'm versatile, and I'm weird. I'm very weird, and I like that, and that's why the song I Like That is my anthem, because it really allows me to celebrate the idiosyncrasies that that set me apart as a person, and also just celebrating the joys of nonconformity. So the question that you asked, Kasey, is really, really important. It's actually very powerful because the way I define myself is really deeply rooted in my consciousness as a Black, like you said, as an African, as a woman, as a Namibian, and as a Black woman specifically. One thing that I would add to my 4 would probably be the fact that I would define myself and openly and happily introduce myself as African royalty, knowing consciously that I come from greatness. I think everybody on this continent does, and I think this is a story that we should own more as a people. And so, this idea of coming from greatness for me has really allowed me to navigate away from the single story of the African, of the poor African, or the destitute Black person, or the person, the small Namibian from the small country, insignificant country that nobody knows about. So this consciousness about who I really am has really allowed me to navigate these spaces very comfortably. And then
the interesting thing is that you described yourself as brave and weird. Tell us a little bit more why you describe yourself as weird.
I'd say, well, it's weirdness is really just being different. And I mean, Professor Mark Davidson from the University of Virginia talks a lot about weirdness and sort of leveraging the value of differences in communities, because once you do that, difference brings impact and it brings change. It is not normal. It's not comfortable, right? And so that I think that's the part of me that I enjoy more, just allowing myself to be weird, to be non-conforming of what society says that I should be. And just, you know, this has allowed me to lean into my identity a lot more and to really graciously and comfortably just author the definition of who I am. So, yeah, that's the part about me that I really love the most.
Wonderful. And the part on braveness, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Braveness and just I think braveness and bold are probably, you know, go hand in hand, in the sense that, I mean, when I was when I had the opportunity, and talking about communities, when I had the opportunity to study at Harvard and then leading the African Development Conference at Harvard, it really put me in a space where I could challenge the status quo. So specifically, when I was the chairperson of the African Development Conference, I was obviously set up with people from major African countries that I love, but also that love to impose their strength over smaller countries like Namibia. So, you know, negotiating and convincing people that I was working with from Nigeria and Ghana to say that Namibia, the small country, has a lot to say on this stage, and bringing my community along on this stage. And so the braveness of saying that Namibia, and also braveness is within our national anthem.
Land of the brave.
Land
yes.
of the brave.
Yeah.
So the braveness of saying that Namibia has something to say at a platform as impactful, as influential as Harvard, and not shying away from it. And I can say that it was such a proud moment, because at that time, at that conference, other than the president of Ghana, who came in one day and then left the same day, other than the president of Ghana, the most influential person at that conference globally was Namibian. She's a black woman, and it was Beans Governors, as she came in her role, as the USG, the Undersecretary General for Africa for the UN. So just being bold enough and being brave to say that we deserve a space as well, and yeah.
Beautiful. So how has this defined your way you engage in your community? And when I'm talking about community, it's these diverse communities that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, maybe if I can speak a little bit more about my geographical community. And I think oftentimes how we show up in our communities, we often think that you have to do something magnificent, right? Something really big in order to create and have impact. But, and I used to think this as well, but coming from the community that I come from, and I proudly say that I come from Katutura, to say that it's not a place of victimhood, but a place of resilience and bravery and boldness.
I'm equally proud to say I come from Katutura.
Yes. Thank you. And so, I mean, so really, for me, what I've realized coming from this community is that, and as corny, I don't know another word for corny would be, like as cliche as it sounds, is that, you know, showing up for your community as a leader is it's pretty basic in the sense that you just show up authentically, consciously as yourself, and then the rest falls into place. I mean, the story, and I'm not sure if I shared this with you, but you know, I choose to live in Katutura because it is a community that I feel was devalued, systemically devalued by the apartheid government. And the more of us who keep moving out when we've, crossed these bridges of success, the more of us that keep moving out, the more we perpetuate the narrative of the devaluation of Katutura. And so my being there, I feel that my showing up and being there and rooted and anchored within my community allows young people and old people to see me as tangible. So I'm not an abstract. I'm not a myth, right? That I came from there. I really do exist, and that I choose to still live in this place, and therefore I value this place. I value you, the people who live in this place, and that it's a beautiful, resilient, and a place that's destined for greatness. If we could all sort of, I hate using this word, but manifest those positive words into that community.
But I just want to add that, and I truly appreciate, and it's beautiful for you to have made a conscious choice to continue living in Katutura, but that doesn't mean that those of us who have left Katutura to live in another suburb are not showing up for our communities, because we do go back and do create an impact in the very communities where we come from.
Yeah.
So that also
Yeah.
need to be clarified for
absolutely.
the audience.
And I think I'd probably just compliment what you say by saying that, it's not to say that we should all stay in Katutura because that's the only place we belong to. This city is ours. Every single corner of the city is ours, and we should occupy it, and we should feel that we belong to every space in this city. And what you specifically mentioned is that, going back and plowing back. That's the important part, because I've been thinking about this idea about tables, right? And getting a seat at the table, getting a seat at the corporate table. And in the same way, you could sort of transfer that same analogy to getting occupying spaces in the city, in the city. And that once we do that, once we are able to move out, once we are able to sit at those tables, we need to still actively participate and show up for a community, so that we do not become that abstract, mythical, superhero black person that moved away, that's not like us, and therefore we cannot achieve what they achieved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The superhero who comes back with a flashy car. And
Yes, exactly.
can hardly identify with the community where you grew up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to because I'm very, very passionate about this, and rightly what you say is that oftentimes, the only times that we see black people moving back into Katutura is on a Saturday and a Sunday to drink and party. You know what I mean? And so what does that say about us as a black community, as a middle and upper middle class black community in this country or in this city?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's rather unfortunate that it is happening, but there are so many examples out there where people do go back to their communities and plow in different ways. I am part of a Dongeruk social club, but the social club is all about plowing back within our community. And the founders and the pioneers, though they are not living in those communities, we go back and support our very communities where we come from. I just want to move a little bit that during Old Mutual East Summit last year, you spoke about the importance of showing up in your community. And in that context, you also highlighted Katutura as a geography, and we have been talking about that. So the question I have to you, tell me why you believe it is important to show up in. I'm looking for the importance. Why is it important? You touched upon that, but why is it important to show up both and for your communities?
I think part of leadership is taking on a responsibility, or accepting a responsibility to take others with you on your journey. And this is part of sort of the public narrative that Marshall Ganz talks about, that, you know, you need to tell your story, bring people on your story, and then by doing so, you inspire them into action. And so, again, that very idea of saying that I choose not to be an abstract figure within my community is me telling my story and bringing people on my journey in a, it's sort of like in a, not in an, you know, direct active way, I guess. But anyway, so it's really bringing people on my journey and inspiring them into action. And I think that is why it's important for me.
So to help our audience out there who are glued on the various platforms, would you be able to share personal stories, personal ways that you have been able to show up, or how this has played out for you personally?
Well, yeah, well, you know, the fact that I'm still rooted in my community, I become a lot more accessible in my community. And it's not, like I said, it's not like I've set up some special program, but people see me as a resource of information. And so oftentimes, you know, during COVID, we're sitting with kids, you know, getting them ready for grade 12 examinations, grade 12 examinations. And so that to me is again a reason why I, you know, want to show up for my community by anchoring myself in my community, because I become more accessible. I've learned that I can do all sorts of things by living in my community, like even like writing business plans. You know what I mean? So people come to me for that support and that guidance, and we work together. And I feel useful in my community, because it's very easy for me to drive back in and feel a sense of I
Belonging?
guess, not belonging, but necessarily like I need to do more for my community. And so I think just being authentic and choosing to live there has, again, allowed people to access me a lot more. And so business plans is one thing. I've become a teacher. I've also become an HR person. You know, HR practitioner, just using my networks to empower my community.
Great. So you did mention and talked a little bit about your role as a chair of the African Development Conference. Would you want to share with us what is this African Development Conference? And then I'll follow up with another question.
Sure. Pretty much that is what it is. It's celebrating, it's one, geared at celebrating Africanness, African greatness, what we have achieved as a continent, as a people, and what we have the potential, and our potential in celebrating those aspects of us. And then also just, it's an opportunity for us to connect, because I think networking, people tend to think of networking as just, you know, we go there, we meet people, but really what it is, it's an opportunity for us to unlock possibilities. And so that's what the conference is really focused on. And just, again, the same thing as this is being able to come together on a platform to share stories at the fireside. And to inspire.
Let's dive a little bit deep in the notion of networking as an opportunity to unlock opportunities. To the many female leaders who are there, what does that mean, and what has that meant for you?
Well, one, like very practically, and I think a lot of people should know this, is that a lot of, you know, your Fortune 500 companies, your bigger companies, will never hire you by submitting an online form or an online submission. And so networking is becomes sort of like the power for you to unlock, you know,
particular
opportunities into these spaces. And that I know specifically Facebook does not look at their online applications. It's a computer generated. I mean, it's computer generated. It throws out applications, and in most cases, 80% of the time, from what I know, is that Facebook only hires on a recommendation. And I mean, you can understand it to a certain extent, in the fact that these companies cannot gamble on hiring the wrong person. So they depend on their recommendation and their network to grow their human capital. So yeah.
So bring it a little bit back home. So within the context of Namibia, what does that mean?
To network?
Yeah. Because it's a word, it's a term, it's a concept that everyone is using.
Yeah.
And for every particular event, you see every young woman, every young man saying that I'm going to this event, it's a networking opportunity, and there is a particular vibe. But how do we help our audience who are female, aspiring, emerging leaders to truly understand and make use of that opportunity so that it can be of benefit to them?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, is that I feel like a lot of people actually do not network. They do not go there. They do not go out and meet, you know, meet potential employers, meet potential mentors. And so this is the potential of what networking has, is, again, the opportunity to unlock the possibilities for you. I think I'm losing my train of thought, but Namibia is a small place to network, for sure. But it does not in no way devalue that you should network within the space, in the Namibian space. But that I would encourage people to network, especially now with the new technologies and opportunities that COVID has unlocked, is that there are opportunities to network virtually, to go to more conferences for free. The African Business Conference at Harvard just took place recently last week. You know, those are networking opportunities. And, you know, having a lunch with someone is a networking opportunity. And just really putting yourself out there. It's almost like dating, you know. If you are serious about getting married this year, or getting married eventually, you obviously put yourself out there. You'd put yourself out there to say that I am, you know, open for opportunities. Sounds really bad. I am open for opportunities. So, yeah, so that's really what it is.
At some point, we talked about that as women, we tend to shy away from opportunities. And I want us to talk a little bit about that.
Well, again, it comes back to your consciousness, how you define yourself, right? Because society is an oppressive system. And oppressive systems are very intelligent and constantly adapting to, you know, redefining what is the status quo, right? And so if you, and it's a hard sell, you know, to say you need to be mindful, you need to be conscious, but it's really something that I feel people should think about more and feel comfortable about more, just because if you allow, again, going back to what I said earlier, if you allow society to define you, then society then cultivates who you become. It cultivates who you define yourself as. And so, and I think this is the trap that unfortunately a lot of oppressive groups fall into, having a system or other people define who we are, what we are capable of, which rooms we can enter, and which opportunities we can unlock. And so, I mean, there's a lot of work and study out there that even, I believe, women generally tend to be more critical of themselves. And therefore, for instance, women tend to not apply for the job which, you know, they're missing one or two criteria on the job description. Mm-hmm. But men who are less qualified and less capable of doing the job according to the resume are still bold enough and brave enough to apply for those jobs. And so, you know, that is one of the aspects that I would really sort of hone in on, is that we need to get into that conscious self and just be weird, be different. Mm-hmm. And it's again a very big ask to go against what society says. Mm-hmm. But when you do, it really again, it unlocks, you know, opportunities for you.
So you are encouraging women to be more bold.
Yeah.
And not to shy away from opportunities if one or two criteria you can't tick.
Yeah.
But you can tick 8 of them.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you can tick 5,
go
for it.
Go for it.
If you just trust yourself, be brave, and if you know, if you understand your capabilities and your capabilities and what you're able to bring to the table, then by all means.
So back to your role as a chair mm-hmm. of the African Development Conference. Mm-hmm. What was challenging in terms of your representation, given your identities that we've spoken about?
Well, feeling like you're David going up against Goliath, mm-hmm. and having to anchor yourself as a meaningful voice mm-hmm. to the conference, or a meaningful representation to the conference. And I mean, I'd like to highlight again that we were able to bring in a lot of Namibians. I'm pretty sure that was the first African Development Conference that had more than, I guess, 15 to 20 Namibians attending.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, representation, 2 people who represented on the keynote stage, which was again Beans Governess and Advocate Beans Governess, and the current Minister of Finance, Ipumbu Shimi. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, just also highlighting, you know, the students that were there, and more specifically, Mary-Jean Dimbira was a voice, a Namibian voice on that stage on behalf of youth. And so I can't think, other than the fact that it was, you know, I felt like David going against Goliath, I still, the most, I guess, intricate memories that I have is those of the wins that we had as the Namibian community on the Harvard stage.
Wow, mm-hmm. That's a beautiful example, and mm-hmm. Yeah, in a powerful way how Namibians, and I do know very much at international platforms, mm-hmm. when you sort of rock up and you say you are Namibian and people look at you and they don't even know, whether a country Namibia,
or
like
how many
Namibia exists.
Live there.
How many people live there, and when you sort of talk about the 2.5 million, it's like, so wow, you must be joking, so you must know everyone in that country. Yeah. So that's a lovely example, and lovely that other people like our former governor of Bank, the Minister of Finance, mm-hmm. Wendy Ipumbu, mm-hmm. Shimi, and Advocate Beans Governors were mm-hmm. in those platforms. Yeah,
and I mean, just to add as well, what was beautiful about that was that I think they were definitely the 2 most popular people there.
Wow.
It's because, again, we brought a different story. and Namibia does generally. You know, you sit around, throughout my life I've always, you know, my school in Canada, working in the US, and then, you know, just talking to people is that when you're with other Africans, they tend to tell stories that you as a Namibian are like, that's not my African story. And so, so we really do have a unique perspective, a different perspective to provide. And when people see that, they see it, you know, they leverage the difference that we have as a country.
Are you able to give us an example of that particular unique story that we can tell? Because sometimes, as Namibian, we also tend, as a community, as a bigger community, we tend to also see ourselves as an insignificant, small little country. But what you were saying, and I have experienced that we do have a story to tell. So what example particularly showed up?
Yeah, so one of the most beautiful stories about Namibia is that there is an active and intentional sort of agenda to drive women empowerment. And I mean, just, it is no coincidence that, and I don't think anywhere in the world or anywhere in this continent you can have what we have now in Namibia, 5 women heading, you know, 5 of the biggest banks in this country. And I think we should mention them. So we have Bernice Hans.
Mercia Cases.
Mercia Cases is at
Standard Bank.
Standard Bank.
Martha Murorwa.
You know.
Nedbank. Esther Kali.
Right, Lesotho.
Letseho. And the 5th one?
The last one. No, that was it, the 4.
The 4.
So we have four women leading 4 big banks in this country. That in itself is a unique story.
Wow, girl power.
Right? And also what I think is really beautiful and powerful for me, that it is absolutely no coincidence that during COVID, during the time where economies are non-existent, women are sort of naturally brought in to the space to fix the situation. And because we are great, and we will, you know, we will do more. No offense to men, we will do more because again, we are operating for a different lens and you know, and a different understanding. And even if we take it as far as, you know, what's happening at the World Trade Organization now with Dr. Ngozi, is that there is something to say about Black female greatness. And I think, you know, if I were to speak to young people right now, is that we need to own this wave and we need to ride this wave because, you know, our representations out there are exceptional, and there's no reason why we should be shying away from, you know, from rising to the greatest tables.
Beautiful. So in helping our audience to see the importance of this from a leadership angle, in the context of authentic and effective leadership, what are the questions that we need to ask ourselves as women?
In what sense? Like, am I capable? Am I able?
Whatever questions so that you...
I think the question shouldn't be, I don't know if questions is the right avenue. Rather, we should move from, I am great, I come from greatness, I am capable, I deserve this. You know, this is something that equally belongs to me as it does to the next person who is generally in a much more privileged space than I am. And so I think that's what we should be focusing more on, because for the longest time we've been told that you are not, right? And so it's, again, really going back and being able to redefine our narratives and just being able to author our self-identity.
Beautiful. So in order for us to show up for our communities and respecting diversities in various communities to operate in our spaces, both in workplace and beyond, what actions do we need to take? It's a little bit of a long question,
Yeah.
but I want to know, so if I'm a female aspiring leader out there, what actions do I need to take in order to operate in those spaces?
Yeah, allow yourself to move. I think I'm a millennial, and I think it's been proven that millennials don't stick in one place for a long time.
You'll never be able to.
But you know, allow yourself to move. Allow yourself to experience different opportunities. And I think oftentimes we think that, oh, I'm too old, or you know, I've done that already. But my belief is always that as long as you're still alive, there's still tomorrow, which means that there's still a future, and which means that there's still opportunity for you to mold that in a way that that you want to see yourself in the future. I would again go back to saying, I think the theme of the day for me really is that, you know, embrace your weirdness and just leverage from you being different in order to create and bring impact. Yeah.
Great. So let's move to your workplace and how you've been applying this. So I read somewhere, and I think Maurice had talked about that in your portfolio, one of the things that you're focusing on is as an organizational gender strategist. So what are some of the things that you focus on as an organizational gender strategy?
So I think that when you look at gender strategies, or what it is that you're really trying to, you're supporting organization in defining and forging their paths around inclusive leadership programs, and you know, making their organizations potentially more, or actually part of it as well is that with gender strategy or inclusive programs, is that you're not just re-strategizing the culture and the belief systems around inclusiveness, but you're also potentially increasing the net profit of that organization. Again, going back to the fact that organizations operate best, or they flourish the most when they really embrace differences, when they really diversity and weirdness, and the nonconformist. By weirdness being like nonconformist, I guess, paradigms, right? And so one of the things about, unfortunately, about inclusive diversity programs or initiatives is that they fail miserably. They fail miserably because they are
Why is that the case?
Well, I mean, Lisa Leslie, yes, from the NYU. New York University. She actually, and if you have an opportunity, should read up on a lot of her work around the unintended consequences of inclusive and diversity programs.
Equity programs.
Yeah, because there are a lot of negative spillovers that come from implementing them in the wrong way. I mean, there's no right way, but there's no specific template, but really understanding, again, your organizational consciousness and culture, and then allowing it to, and then using the different avenues to achieve your goal. So one of the spillovers tend to be, for instance, that you create stereotypes around the group that you're intending to support. And so those unintended spillovers. You also, you know, when companies introduce these inclusive programs, you feel that you find that some people leave organizations because of that. And so just being aware of those unintended consequences and being able to strategize in a way that will actually reap benefits and not. Because some of the things as well is that with one of the unintended consequences is that organizations start to use it as, you know, a tick of the box. We've done it, you know, that's it. But has it really created impact and influence? and you know, just getting leadership to I don't think you can get leadership to buy into the idea, but leadership needs to believe in the idea of inclusiveness and diversity being a potential for change and growth for their organization.
I think that's an important aspect for it, that if you, and I want to believe that you need to have the buy-in, but have leadership understand that there is potential of growth. And it's not just one of those programs to tick a box and to sort of say legally, we have we have diversity and gender inclusion, and tick, tick, tick the boxes. So I do believe that you have a point there in terms of saying that when we're dealing with these programs, that we drive it to a point of that there is a potential benefit for the organization, and it's not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Yeah. So in this particular role as a gender strategist, how do you show up for a community of women, particularly in your workplace or beyond?
Right. I think for me around this area is that as women, and I go back to what I initially started, I briefly mentioned earlier, is that as the idea of the seat at the table, right? So I think...
Can you talk a little bit about
the seat at the table? Yeah, sure. No, so it's I think the most prominent sort of picture that I have of a seat at the table is with Miles Baldwin in his poem, where he talks about, he's basically talking about African Americans the table being America, and that they too have a seat at the table, and that they do not need to, you know, be sidelined by, you know, when guests come over, that they have to eat in the kitchen. That they too have a seat and a space at the table because they too are America. And so in the same sense, when we look at gender, is that women have been sidelined for so long, for so many reasons, some intentionally, some unintentionally, but saying that we do deserve a seat at the table. But I mean, there's also a question and thought around that, do we really need a seat at the table? Or
and what if I'm not invited to that table?
You don't need to be invited to that table. You just,
because many people would be waiting and saying that I'm not invited, I'm not invited.
And that you need to be you need to be bold enough and brave enough to say that I do deserve a seat at that table, and that I will occupy it. And once I occupy it, and this is what you see with a lot of women, once you occupy it, they that space, they then occupy. Almost, it's like they take over the whole table with that belief that I deserve to be here. And so there's a recent article, I forget by who it was, but the question was, and it would be interesting to know what people think about this, is that is it that we need more seats at the table, or that we need to create our own tables?
That's a very interesting one, and I'm turning to our audience just to remind you that shortly we'll be having, we will be inviting questions from you, and I think Taimi is posing a question to you as well, and you might answer as well, because we want to be a very interactive session.
Yeah.
Thank you, Taimi.
Yeah, no, so really, is it, do we have to, you know, as marginalized people, we tend to want to chase, because that is the normative, we tend to want to chase to be in the white space, right? Or to be at the corporate table, or
the male space.
Yeah, the main spaces. But is it also worth considering for us to be brave and bold enough to create our own tables?
And then invite the others.
And then invite others, and build our own spaces. And then build our narrative that is a lot more inclusive than the oppressive systems that we're constantly trying to push into.
So what are some of the things that organizations can do to promote gender equality, equity in the workplace?
Well, there are a couple. So, I mean, again, there is that idea that you can create leadership programs for women, encourage women more. One of the reasons why women are not particularly in certain job categories or in executive positions. I know in Namibia and globally, I think the numbers are pretty much on par, that only 18% of executives are female. And this is attributed to a lot of issues that come with, one, just the general empowerment of women, so training and leadership programs, the general support of women in the workplace. So, for instance, family programs within organizations, for the very reason that women tend to take up the role of the head of the family, and so in most cases tend to miss opportunities to rise, because organizations tend to reward those who can work longer, who can work harder, who are a lot more flexible, which really sort of leaves a lot of women out of that equation when they're equally capable, but there are these other societal responsibilities. Yeah, so let's stick to those two for now.
That's good.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would like to share with our audience that is not particularly a question that you want to dive deep into? I think one of the notions and the concepts that you normally speak about is excellence. You tend to speak about excellence. The conversations I had with you, you would always, we need to have.
Well, I mean, like, it really goes back again to my belief system in consciousness and Black consciousness and Black excellence, and that when we've crossed over into those spaces of Black excellence and Black greatness and African greatness, it is only right for you to be able to give that back, because oftentimes when we've crossed those barriers into these normative spaces, we do the exact same thing. Or we keep those barriers as opposed to opening them up for more people to enter, and for it to be less exclusive and more inclusive. And so I think that would be my leap. But again, my word of the day, and I guess I'm embracing it now even more, is that really just, embrace your weirdness, and leverage that difference, and then also just network so much out of, or network as much as possible, because it unlocks, not just those human connections, but also just those opportunities, and then just allow yourself and really believe in yourself to define who you are. And be, the author of the definition of yourself.
Wow, that's beautiful. So this notion of networking, I just want us to unpack it a little bit, because you mentioned one or two things. One is about that quite often we go out there thinking that we are going to network, but we are not networking to be able to access those opportunities. So I really want us to talk in layman's language and help our audience out there to understand what it is, because the concept of coaching and mentoring is probably a new one for us. And so how do you network to be able to find those opportunities? And maybe you have examples, and I do know that you have examples of people in your life that played that particular role in your life.
Yeah, well, like it's not a far-fetched not that much of a far-fetched concept. because networking is talking to people, right? Talking to people about your dreams, about your wants, about your potential, and really selling yourself, right? And it's not that complex as it sounds. And then, I mean, just having the opportunity to have a mentor, having the opportunity to have somebody who you can speak to about your dreams and your goals allows them to basically, I guess, open up their networks for you, right? So, I mean, I always think about Navira Orlifir, who is actually just retired last week from the Namibia University of Science and Technology, from NUST. And she was that one person in my life who actually, she was the person who introduced me to consciousness and mindful leadership. Because a simple exercise, which I sometimes thought was a bit silly and ridiculous. So what she used to do was every Friday, somebody was given the opportunity to share their vision board. And so when it was my turn, there was really two things that I remember from this vision board. And one was to go to the Harvard Kennedy School, and two was to open a wellness center for Black women in Windhoek. And I could say that 4 years after that, I opened with a friend of mine, Nangado Kaluma, Pulse Health and Wellness, which was a boutique studio based in Windhoek and catering to everybody, but with really the idea to bring more Black women to wellness and mindfulness and fitness. And then 7 years later, I got my first letter to start my master's at the Harvard Kennedy School. So just the opportunity of being connected to people who can unlock, you know, your potential is one, you know, one easy, or is myself for networking, and is myself, so let's not call it networking, just talking to people about your dreams, your goals, and your wants. Yeah.
And that's great. The one question I have and that I saw is, how can we get out of the comfort zone? Because one, I think, I agree that female networking is difficult, but how can we get out of that comfort zone?
Yeah.
How do we identify those people? And I do have my own examples of sometimes people coming and they looking for those opportunities, and then they are not ready for those opportunities. They don't want to get out of that comfort zone. So as you said that you had this opportunity every Friday with your colleagues to have this platform where you share your dreams through a vision board. Awkward and sounded silly, but it was that powerful. And when you went back 4 years after, Open the Wellness business with Nangado, and then you were able to go to Harvard, to your dream school. And so how do we help women to get out of that comfort zone? Because quite often we are in a comfort zone. It's uncomfortable to get out of this space.
The thing about that is, and probably Karen would have been able to articulate this this a lot more, is that, and I think she said that in the first round of the Lean In, is that, you know, comfort does not produce growth. And like you need to move into that discomfort in order to break those barriers. Again, like if you hold yourself back, you'll hold yourself back forever. And I mean, there's no easy way. I don't think, maybe, you know, people in the audience could share a little bit more, but there's no easy way but stepping into the uncomfortable and allowing yourself to see what you're capable of. And I mean, like, even going to the Harvard Kennedy School, one of the greatest choices that I made, I think I should mention this, is that it took me 10 years to go back to school, close to 10 years. But in doing that, it allowed me to better understand myself. And so going back, I knew exactly, or I had an idea of what I wanted to work on and what I wanted to do better, right? And so maybe if I go back to your question about what would I tell young emerging leaders, is that you don't have to go at everybody's pace. Go at your pace, because in that sense life will reveal itself. It really does. And as inspirational as that sounds, it really does, and it is true. And so being at the Kennedy School, what was my stepping out of my comfort zone was at the Kennedy School, there was a class by Professor Tim McCarthy called, I forget what it was called, but nonetheless, the idea was for us to speak in front of people. I, as you can tell by my voice, is very timid and soft. I tend to be a lot more introverted, but it was stepping out of that discomfort and going into a class or signing up for a class that I knew, the activities included every 2 weeks, standing up in front of, 30, 40 people and telling a story. Or motivating and inspiring people. And so it's just, and so that's why I'm able to do this today. Had Old Mutual called me a year or two ago, 3 years ago, asked me to do this, there's absolutely no way, because I would have never honed that skill. And so it's really just stepping out of your comfort zone.
Good. The next question: as leaders, how can we invest in our communities and bring others with us?
How can we invest in our communities and bring others with us? It's, I think, the theme of what we've been talking about, which is show up. Show up to connect to people, show up to connect with people, and really put your human hat on, which is to connect and listen. And I think, for me, it's as simple as that. It's not, there isn't, a particular formula, but just being intentional in your accepting of your leadership role in your community.
There is another question. Are you involved in a mentorship program?
Am I part of a I guess the question is, do I take on mentors?
I hope
I think
the participant can clarify it, but in the absence of that, I think.
But I think even this is an example. The Old Mutual platform is an example of investing into your community and bringing them along with you. And I think that during the last eSummit, this platform within itself again created a networking opportunity for me, for people who were listening in. And since then, I've met with at least six young emerging leaders. And we've been able to share, talk, and probably, sort of forge our paths to greatness and our goals and our dreams.
Thank you, Taimi. I think we are about to conclude our conversation.
Okay.
Time has run very fast, and thank you to the audience and participants out there. This was a great conversation.
Thank you.
And I just want to add that this is concluding our third and a series of the 2020 Lean In Circle sessions. It has been a wonderful journey, and I just want to add to what Taimi have said, that myself being here as well, this platform has opened opportunities, and people do come back to me and say, how can I do this, or who can I link up with? And because of this platform, I'm able to either refer people to sort of say that I think that issue that you want to deal with, go speak to Karen Powell or to Tiny or to Zenzi or anyone else out there. So this is a great opportunity, and it was a wonderful journey that we are concluding. So we are looking forward to what 2021 is having for us. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Taimi.
Thank you.
It's
And can I
wonderful.
just say, if we have
Yeah.
some more time, just say that whoever asked that question, find me on LinkedIn, send me a message, we'll get together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.